My name is Maniza Naqvi, and this is the third part of the 28th episode of the Little Book Company podcast. In this podcast, I'm focused on Razia Bhatti and Newsline magazine. In this part, my guest is Saira Irshad, founding member of Newsline magazine, and before that worked at the Dawn Group at its Herald Magazine publication. Saira Irshad was a founder, member, and elected board member of South Asians for Human Rights, SAHR, which was spearheaded by Asma Jahangir and I.K. Gujral, among others. Welcome, Saira.
Thank you.
Saira, when I got in touch with you about this podcast, you said you immediately agreed to do this, and you said this was a subject very close to your heart.
Yes, it was. It is a subject very close to my heart because Newsline was, it was something that changed my life. It was the best education I ever had, and I was very fortunate because I had wonderful people that I think I just grew and evolved with. Journalism was almost, accidental for me because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I know I love to write and I know I love to paint.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I got involved with both actually. And then one day a friend of mine who was in college in the States, he said, let's do a report on mental illness in Pakistan and how it's dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, to cut a long story short, we did it. And Hamid Harun at the Dawn said, I want to use this in the Star, which was a newspaper they had then,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to come and work with us. And I was kind of dithering, but he's quite forceful, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the Dawn. He said, you can work here, you can work at the Star, and then finally to the Herald. And Razia Bhatti was there, and it was just, as far as I was concerned, it was love at first sight. It was so comforting because she was an incredible human being.
I
And
was
she said, I'm going to have her. I'll have her. I'll have her. And I was a young girl. So, it was just easy. And so those were the first few years. And and then, of course, it was the bad years. It was Ziaul Haq's time. And, what you wrote was censored. And there was a lot of problems. And we were, I think, very independent, a little too independent and too brave. And I think that there was pressure on the Dawn group at that time. And so finally, they found. I think they thought that Razia was too independent,
mm-hmm.
and at that time, as happened, it was there were just like literally four of us at the Herald office, or five of us. One of um, Rehana Hakim was with us, but she had gone to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Samina Ibrahim had left a year earlier, and I don't remember. I don't think Zahid was on he was. I don't think he was fully with us at that time or working. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was somebody who joined us very recently, Amber Khairi, who'd just been there, I think, 10 days, and Temina Ahmed, who had been there 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and myself and Razia.
Mm-hmm.
So Razia was summoned to the office and told that she, we'd done a cover story as happened on Benazir Bhutto, who was just going to be coming back, and we'd put her on the cover, and we were told, you can't, you have to scrap the story, scrap this, and we said certainly not. Anyway, she was summoned, and so she resigned,
So
and I resigned with her, and so the other two said we're going to resign too,
this would have been
and which was wonderfully loyal of them, considering they hadn't even been there very long. So both of them resigned, and four of us walked out.
Saira.
And
Saira, this can you put a timeline on that? This would have been August
yeah, this was in 1989,
88.
and no, 88. Yes, I'm sorry, 1988. And it was ironic because we walked out, and then I just kept saying we've got to do something, and I'm sure we can. And everybody was quite skeptical because we didn't have the budget, we didn't have the wherewithal, and of course immediately Samina and Rihanna and everybody was informed, and they all said we're on board. As Samina had already left the Herald, but she said I'm on board, and Rihanna of course said immediately, of course, and Zahid said I'll join you, so he joined us a little later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Newsline started. We got help from people, from friends, and the first few meetings were held at my house, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really, it was quite. And I mean, I don't know. There wasn't a moment's doubt as far as I was concerned, and I think even the others, we were just so excited and enthusiastic about how this was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it came up, and because it was I think it was the first journalist cooperative in South Asia, and it was completely and absolutely independent. So of course we got no government advertising, we got no support from anyone vis-a-vis the government.
So all of you just put in your own money and started.
We put in our own money, and we had a few friends who came in and put in some money as well, wanted to support us,
Where was
and
your
we couldn't have done it without them.
and your first office was in the Metropole Hotel?
The first office was in a small room, yeah, and then we moved into a small flat, and then we moved into another apartment, and we had absolutely no security, which was, everybody was very daunted by that. "Okay, how can you be at work? You're threatened, you're this, you're that," which we were.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought no, and we were just very lucky because we had so much public support.
Mm-hmm. And of course, when you say, people were wondering, how could you do this without having any security, just an open, place,
Yes.
on the roadside, flat. I guess they were thinking that, for example, the other big news agencies, including the Dawn, had lots of security, high walls, and the Times were troubled as well.
They were, but it was ironic because the minute we left and we started to work on getting together something of our own, Ziaul Haq, the plane crash happened,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really ironic because I remember being at 70 Clifton, and we couldn't believe that he had actually gone finally.
Mm-hmm.
And I met all the people, I met people from the Dawn,
Mm-hmm.
and they were kind of, I think, almost embarrassed because by then we had walked out,
Mm-hmm.
and so that had become quite an issue, that
Mm-hmm.
about press freedom and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but by then we were well on our way, and we sustained the publication for a long time. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how we did it because given the budgetary constraints and stuff, but we managed.
Mm-hmm.
And in no small part because of Razia Bhatti initially, and then she tragically just passed away very suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, Rihanna just, she was there, thank God, and she just stepped into her shoes,
So,
and we,
Razia passed away in March 1996. Can you
yes.
can you talk to her about what was it about Razia that is so close to your heart, or what was it about her that made her so special?
Um, she was perhaps the brightest human being I have known, the most intelligent, but in the quietest sort of way. She was very certain about how she wanted things done, but she had no ego, she had no arrogance. She was almost maternal. I felt like, I was so grateful to have had her. And she was brilliant. And she was completely honest. I mean, unbelievably so, and so you trusted her completely. Everybody did, and for very good reason.
Mhm. What?
And it was like I said, the very best. Initially I had no confidence. I thought, oh God, how am I going to do this? It's also serious, and so when I was at the Herald, but she gave each one of us the confidence. She took on people who couldn't speak English very well because they wanted to be journalists. And, this was an English language magazine. And I've seen how she has groomed people. She
Mhm.
literally taught them the language and then left them, to their own devices. And many of them have gone on to become, very well known
Mhm.
in their respective fields, in there are authors and there are people in politics and people working in different things.
Mhm.
And really, so much of it owes to her, and
Mhm.
then later to Rehana.
Mhm.
And, and all of us have been given our proteges to deal with, I think. I mean, Razia just said, you're doing it. I remember feeling panicky. Oh, God, I don't know if I can, but you do it. You did it.
Mhm.
So it was wonderful. We
Mhm.
had, it was just wonderful.
Saira, there seems to be a little bit of a back echo or something with the sound. So just it was very good when we got started, but then it started to have a little bit of a background noise. So just be aware of that. Uh,
Okay.
Better now. Um, can you describe the atmosphere in the Newsline offices in those early days with Razia Bhatti?
Well, it was completely informal. We had lots of really interesting, exciting people coming in all the time because people couldn't believe we'd done this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really quite magical. It was very casual. There was, no dress codes and whatever. And everybody was sitting there with their coffee and like a couple of us with our cigarettes um, and incessant talk and incessant chatter. But also, and very often there was, we would get articles which were, I don't know, in almost a different language. And you had to first, try and interpret them, intuit what they were saying almost,
Mm-hmm.
and then rewrite them. And I remember just complaining all the time and saying, I can't bear it. Another 42-page thesis I have to go through in, Sindhi or Urdu or Punjabi or God knows what. And I know everybody felt that way. I was probably the most vocal, but we did it,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up being just a lot of fun. It
Mm-hmm.
was actually, I think, perhaps the most fun thing I've done in my life. I loved every moment of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had mad nights. I mean, I don't think when the magazine, it was end of month or whatever, we would be there 5 nights in a row,
Mm-hmm.
trying to meet some kind of deadline. And that was another, it was just crazy. But
How
we
long?
did it.
What time did you go in the morning in those 5 nights before?
Well, we didn't go in the, well, we never started work till about 11:30, 12, or perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
but then we'd be there all day and all night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, but it was a very heady, euphoric kind of time, when the magazine would be finally out. And um, we had a really, really good time.
Mm-hmm. And
So, yeah, I, it
and
was, I mean, I'll tell you the other ironic thing was when we started Newsline, it was virtually entirely women because Zahid was reporting and he wasn't always on the premises.
mm-hmm.
And so to begin with, they were pretty much all women.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to be driving in and driving out at all hours of the night,
Mm-hmm.
much to, everybody else's. People were worried about it because of the security situation. But
Yes.
we did it.
Yes.
And
It's
yeah,
remarkable. It is remarkable. And and can you tell me what were the articles that you were writing? Were you writing any articles yourself, or were you?
yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It varied a lot. I did a lot of the art reviews and all because I've always had a passion for art.
Mm-hmm.
But I did political articles, but I did a lot of interviews. Actually, just about everything I wrote on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't, I mean, there's just so many that I did one of the first articles I did when I joined the Herald, I think, or was it the Herald, was an article on, believe it or not, Hira Mandi in Lahore,
Mm-hmm.
which was quite a challenge because my friend said, certainly not, you're not going in there. And I was determined. So, they would send me in their car with the bodyguard and whatever. And I said, nobody was talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mehmet Iqbal Hussain, the artist, Rahman Sabai Rahman,
Mm-hmm.
God bless him, he was with us in SAHR as well. He
Mm-hmm.
said, look, I'm going to introduce you to this artist because I was just sitting in his office at Viewpoint and crying. I said, nobody talks to me. They won't let me get off the car. So he introduced me to Iqbal Hussain, who was the famous artist from Hira Mandi, and he just said, "Look, I'll bring some girls." So he got his models to come in and talk to me. And first they wouldn't, and when they wouldn't, I got so frustrated I burst out crying. And they said, "Oh my God, you cry!" And that was it. The floodgates had opened. So suddenly I was taken, and I was allowed to meet all the girls who worked in the bazaar. It was an interesting story. And that was the very first article I did. And, it was a bit, people were saying, "Oh my God." But it was a historical piece because I did the whole walled city of Lahore. And it wasn't just the flesh trade, it was a more humanistic kind of piece. And with, and with the historical perspective. So yeah, that's one of the first big articles I did. And there were many others like that. And I wrote about our travels to interesting places I'd been to, and um, and a lot of interviews. I did a lot of interviews.
And this was both at the Herald and at Newsline and all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, like I said, we did a lot of rewrites, a lot of it. So, yeah.
The rewrites were for other people's articles.
Yes. I mean, and a lot of them were literally virtually rewrites.
So usually just using those articles for the facts they were providing and then just rewrite.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Tell me more about Razia Bhatti. You didn't know her before you came to the Herald?
No, I didn't know her at all. As I said, but she was the most welcoming, and she was shy, in her own way. But certainly, she was just very loving, very welcoming. Just a person of huge vision, huge, and a huge heart to match.
What was her vision?
And sorry?
Define her vision, will you?
Well, she was, like I said, she was very honest. And she was very progressive. And she had a very defined sense of, right and wrong, I think, in a very universal kind of way, And of course, she believed a lot in human rights and all the things that really matter, I think. And that's how Newsline was run, and that's the ethos of Newsline was.
So you said she was shy in her own way, and yet she was so courageous, and she stood up to power.
Yes, she won the Courage in Journalism Award in New York, and she was a recipient of several awards, and she was. But again, there was absolutely no ego. She just did it also quietly, it was unbelievable. And she was so widely respected and loved, and for very good reason. Now, we were lucky, we had Razia and then we had Rihanna. And Rihanna had been with Razia from the very early days as well, when they were working together, I think, in the Herald. So they'd been together many years, and Rihanna is another, quite, she's really quite amazing, and great energy, and again, another very fundamentally honest, good, bright person. So the transition, of course, initially was very hard for us because we just didn't even know whether we should continue without Razia. But Rihanna just took over, and thankfully she did. So we continued for so many years after that.
What was it? This might be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What was it like that day when you all found out that Razia had passed away? Because
God, it was just unbelievable. Christine, who was our secretary at the time, called me and just said, "Madam, sit down, sit down." And I said, "Why?" And she said, I have bad news." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Madam Razia has passed." I thought I was going to have a heart attack, I swear. And all of us reacted in exactly the same way. I remember Samina saying she just started to scream, and I mean, all of us were completely shell shocked, completely. And we just didn't know what to do. So we all went running to Razia's place. just nothing seemed real. It was just horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But what can you do?
I mean, that was a high pressure job she had.
Yeah, very high pressure, and she had been put under pressure. She
Mm-hmm.
had been put under pressure, and she was, and there were threats. I mean, there were threats. I think all of us received them at some point or another. But
Mm-hmm.
she must have got the brunt of it. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and um, the day before that, something had happened. She'd been summoned to somebody's office, and I think she was told, in no uncertain terms, that she had to be careful. And I think children were mentioned, and they were quite young at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that frightened her terribly. And so, yeah, that was the end of that.
Mm. Was What was the last issue that she was working on?
Oh God, I can't remember.
I
I cannot.
I think I can help you. I
Mm,
that Hassan Mushtaba told me it was about extrajudicial killings.
yes, probably.
Mm-hmm.
We'd done several of those, but yeah, that must have been one of them.
Mm-hmm. And so
Certainly.
that was
Yeah,
the March issue or the February issue that she'd put to bed.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it was lovely. I'll tell you the other reason was we had poets there like Hassan. We
Mm-hmm.
had authors, budding authors like Hanif, Muhammad Hanif.
Mm-hmm.
We had people, it was such a wide variety of people. And Razia managed to get many of them on board. Even just the people who wrote for us, are the people who wrote for Newsline. So you saw a lot of really good names in there because we had all the best people writing for us, which was good. It lent the magazine credibility, and um, it inspired us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Rahman was our absolute guru.
Yeah.
He was just the most wonderful man. Really, I just adored him. We all did.
Yeah. I,
And so, yeah, he was wonderful.
mm-hmm.
And we had, good people like Zahid Hussain, who was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just, I mean, there were so many others that I can name, but it will
Mm-hmm.
be too long the list.
And what was it like having Mohammed Hanif in the office with you? Was it I mean, was there a lot of humor in the office as a result? Or?
Well, not to begin with. I mean, he was quite shy. It was, Razia just kind of took him under her wing initially. And then I kind of inherited him also.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was very tongue in cheek, a very wry, droll kind of sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and of course he's quite brilliant. So he has a great instinct for the story, a
Mm-hmm.
great instinct about human nature, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he managed to have his finger on the pulse of things, and he kind of got it right. So yeah, he's good. He's very good at what he does.
Was was Newsline his first job as a journalist?
He joined us, I think, I'm not sure, I think at the Herald.
Okay.
That's where, if I'm not mistaken. And then, oh, I'm not sure actually. I think it was at the Herald, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And then joined us at Newsline immediately because this was around the time we all left.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, Razia immediately saw something in him. Although at that time he wasn't very fluent in English, and but he was just brilliant, and you could tell, she could tell.
interesting that I'm glad you said that before I prompted you there because Amba Khairi had said something similar. She said Razia Bhatti had the ability to see the specialness in someone
Yes,
special.
absolutely, she did.
Mm-hmm.
She really did, and she was very gifted at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had it, it attracted a lot of people. I think there was also a romance about the idea that this, oh my God, they're just women here. It's run entirely by women, and many of them, many of us were quite young at the time, and the fact that we were treading on everyone's toes. So we were universally kind of hated by the establishment, and you know, not very popular with assorted governments, and not very popular with and the history of journalism in Pakistan has always been fraught with danger and whatever.
Mhm,
So it was a challenge,
mhm,
but I think it just worked,
mhm.
and you know we we just mulled along. I don't think any of us actually even really thought of it. It
Yeah.
was just what we wanted to do, and we did it. That was all there was. And when we got threats and all that, we would just, I don't know, it's amazing when I look back now. I would have been a lot more frightened today than I was then.
Mhm. Because that was also the time when MQM ruled the roost.
Yes, and of course they were certainly not our best friends. We'd had a lot of um, insidious messages and
Yeah,
whatever from them.
yeah,
It
they were.
was ironic because I think I had written something or done something. They were particularly angry at one point, and then I was in London and I wanted to interview Altaf Hussain,
Mhm,
and at first they just said you must be crazy, because I was enemy, well, number one or among them. And then I got a call one day, and they said, "Come."
mhm,
He had his office on Edgware Road, whatever. I said, "Okay." So I went running to interview him, and
mhm,
that turned out to be I think, one of the longest interviews I've ever done, because he speaks and he speaks. And I mean, it was interesting, certainly. And I thought, God, he's going to be very hostile, and I was a little frightened, but he wasn't. Um, and it, you know, it, it it was interesting. It was interesting to hear him speak and whatever. And it was published, of course, in Newsline.
mhm,
And subsequent to that, I started getting calls from them because they suddenly thought that perhaps I was converted. Um, and I hadn't been converted to anything, of course. But yeah, so I kept getting called whether I'd like another interview, whether I'd attend things, and but that was yeah, just interesting.
That's very interesting. And was this
Mhm.
interview during before 1996?
Yes, I think it was. I can't
And
remember. I can't remember. My memory is really shot to hell right now. I can't. There have just been so many things that have happened.
mhm, mhm. And it's been a while. So
Yeah.
it's 1988, August 17th to be exact, 1988, Ziaul Haq,
Yes.
you know, blows up. And then in the next 6 months, by November of that year, Benazir Bhutto gets elected. Uh,
Yes.
General euphoria, I'm sure, in the newsroom and in at
There
Newsline.
was. There was euphoria, and also when I look back again, I think we enjoyed quite a good level of press freedom at the time.
Mhm,
It was you felt safer. We didn't, at least as far back as I can recall, we didn't feel threatened. We didn't feel, and we were writing as much as and whatever we wanted.
mhm,
And I don't remember feeling threatened at all in those years. There was none of that.
mhm. And then
So, mm,
by the time 1996 rolls around or 1995,
mm,
did things change dramatically?
yeah, things kept changing.
Mhm,
Um, but you had to keep abreast of it. You had to be careful about what you were saying and what you were doing. But I think we all worked with this. There was a certain amount of self censorship. You had to be smart about how you did it,
mhm,
but you still did it. You still wrote what you wanted,
mhm, mhm,
and we continued. I mean, I think by then we'd all got the picture,
mhm, mhm,
and yeah, it was. I mean, it's been quite a journey.
Hmm. And the journey
Uh,
continued till 2019.
yes, yes, we actually couldn't really, because the electronic media had really taken off, and no advertising was coming in from the private sector, and we couldn't sustain the magazine.
Hmm.
And finally, we just had to call it today. Another group had come in and bought the shares of Newsline.
Hum TV.
And yes, but they didn't sustain it for very long. I think we, again, were too independent for them, perhaps. So, which was actually very sad.
So
So
you,
then we just, mhm. And
so,
then we just had to finally call it a day.
so Newsline, the team remained idealistic, independent, and
Yeah, I think so.
all very, very, laudable, wonderful qualities. But advertising and advertising revenue was just the only way to survive, right?
Yeah, and it just shrank. And remember, we'd never had any government advertising, which is what sustains the big papers and stuff. And we didn't have that. And of course, we didn't have any, we had no backing, no financier behind us, because a lot of these um, things, they're run by business houses or whatever, newspapers and stuff. So they can sustain themselves, and we could. And so, yeah, so I think we were all ready to hang up our,
So,
just call it a day.
Saira, I've just got a few more minutes left of
Yeah.
time to uh, just reflect a little bit more on Razia Bhatti to close us out.
Sorry?
Can you just reflect on Razia Bhatti's personality and her contribution a little?
Well, I think that she has left an absolutely amazing legacy. I think that what Razia taught us all, I think the Herald, followed up with that for a long time. But of course, they were part of a certain group, so they had to conform to, whatever they had to conform to within the parameters of that organization. She certainly gave us all the vision and all the foresight and all the, and that, like I said, that complete integrity and honesty and decency. I don't think I've met many people like that, really.
Mhm,
And she was, well, apart from my mother, who I had all of the above, I think, but really, she was just wonderful. She
well,
was a wonderful soul. And she is so missed even today. We talk about her all the time. We miss her.
mhm,
She was very loved, very respected. I mean, it's strange how many people would come and talk about her, but
mhm,
just talk about because of her editorials, people who never met her.
mhm,
But she was held in very high esteem, very high regard, not just in Pakistan, but quite internationally. She
mhm.
was known, and she had a real flair with her words, and she was just wonderful.
That's quite a tribute to her, Saira. Thank you so
Mhm.
thank you so much.
No, thank you for doing this for Newsline, and I hope all the others will be on board as well.
I hope so too, but I am amazed that it's within 24 hours. After Hassan Mustafa asked me, or as he says, reminded me to do this, uh, three of the core team people stepped up right away, including you. And I hope that within the next 48 hours, everybody else that I've reached out to will also, contribute to this.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure. I mean, everybody loved Newsline. It was our own baby, So yeah,
you were, you were that amazing team, but I was, one of the hundreds or thousands of people that waited anxiously, impatiently for Newsline every month uh,
yeah.
to to get a grip on what was going on. Uh,
It's nice to hear a generation of people saying to me that, oh, we read Newsline all our lives. We grew up. reading Newsline. It was the one serious magazine in our house, and I thought, wow, how wonderful to know that a generation in Pakistan is actually, and students studying abroad. They said we would just always follow Newsline because it gave us, the true picture of what was happening in our country, and um, and many people besides, actually, many non-Pakistanis as well, which is good.
Let me put it this way: Razia Bhatti's Herald, and then the Newsline, all the way to
Mhm.
those were the things, two magazines, two sources of information that told us and taught us what was happening.
Yeah, and I think Razia had a lot, pretty much everything to do with that, actually.
Mhm.
I think Razia Bhatti was the one who laid, she's the one who actually put it all in perspective. I remember, I recall other magazines, and I recall thinking, God, why aren't they saying this? So there were so many things that were missing from the narrative, and I thought, why? I mean, I understand why, but now I think better. That time I was younger, and it used to just irk me. And now I know
Yeah.
she was just very brave, and she had the guts to get up there and just say it all and get us to say it all.
And so we leave it with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maniza. I'm so happy Newsline is being remembered.
Thank you, Saira.
Okay. Take care. Bye.